this. Okay, what is trauma? Let's define it, because still today I see things that cross my feed that don't properly identify what trauma is. They still think of it as experiences. And I've even seen Gabor Mate in videos say, oh, I had a traumatic day. And he would say, no, you didn't. That's because this word is overused, way overused and misunderstood. Now, mind you, I was an EMT for 16 years, as long as being a firefighter and rescue operator and all that. And I didn't know what trauma was. Mind you, for me, it meant something that made you bleed too much, something that made you stop breathing enough, and or something that made you think you were Queen Elizabeth, in 1200 BC. Okay, those are the things that were trauma to us. And so then I started to, after a crash and burn, metaphorically, which is on my website, my perfect storm event, I had to learn what the heck I was dealing with. I had no idea, even at the time. This is 2011, had no idea. And so as I began to recover and discover what was going on, it still took me a few years to put these pieces together to figure out just exactly what was happening that created trauma. So we'll look at this picture first. All right. Because I would say that what trauma is a neurophysiological state of disequilibrium. It even defies my own description, which is on my website, in that it's a wound. And I'll get to that because that could still be a part of it. Here is the picture of the neuro side of being knocked out of equilibrium. Because when we're in equilibrium, neurologically, we're down here in this green zone called social engagement. This is all based on Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory, because this is what happens when the threat response happens. Now, mind you, I'm not saying stress response. And if you want an interesting read, Hans Selye, who coined and discovered what he calls the general adaptation syndrome, which is the stress response, aka fight or flight or freeze, arousal according to some, mobilization according to some, it does something, all right? Neurophysiologically, this is the neurological side. It takes us out of social engagement. Now we're talking distress. That means you feel like there is a threat. And that knocks you into fight or flight. Now, if it gets bad enough, fast enough, boop, you'll go right up into freeze, just like that. Now, here's something to consider. And this all works together. This is the neurological side. Look at this over here. These are all of the emotions. And now I haven't quite yet, I haven't seen anything yet to support the notion, my notion, that these emotions are the default emotions of fight or flight. And then these become the default behaviors and thoughts and things of freeze. So we have the fight, flight associated emotions. I'm not quite there on positing that that's default. However, when you think there's a threat, those are predominant. Now, what trauma is being chronically in these blue circles, in these two states right here. Kind of what this squiggly line is supposed to represent. That's the neurological manifestation of trauma. It's not the event. It's your one half of this is your neurophysiological state. Where this becomes psychological is imagine living this way. Imagine that. Imagine if this was the predominant emotional set that you experienced day after day after now. What this means is when you're living like this, a threat, that means you are aware almost 24/7. You're looking over your shoulder for the threat. because you know it's there. Your nervous system says it's there, and you get triggers all day long. It says it's there. And I mean, ask any woman who's been raped or been stalked. What are they doing? They're looking over their shoulder all the time. What do you think that does to sleep? What do you think that does to your emotions? What do you think that does to your belief systems? That's the psychological side. And you could call that a wound. That's literally what the word trauma means. And yes, this is disruptive to living like this, living in the green zone. Living in this red or blue zone is very disruptive, because imagine how that's being played out at work. Hoo-ha. All right. So this is the neurological side. This is not alone. Now we're going to add this one. This is the physiological side. So a lot of things happen physiologically when your brain receives the threat message. All right. The autonomic nervous system goes into high gear, and all of these, and this isn't even a complete list. Look where all these little lines go. Look at the face on this guy. All right. Look at the face on that guy. Two things you see here: fight or flight. All right. Anger, fear, the muscles, the blood. So here's just a short listing of the things that will happen to your body autonomically. All of this jump out of the nervous system is autonomic. So that's the neurological side. And now this is the physiological side, neurophysiological state of being, not in equilibrium. Equilibrium would mean rest and digest. I can put my feet up, don't have a care in the world. All right. So this guy here, notice it points to his eyes. It could point to his ears because the hearing changes. So do the eyes. The pupils dilate. Your field of vision narrows down. Your ears will begin to tune themselves to certain frequencies, and they start to lose blood, as does portions of your brain that aren't required for survival, which is most of it. The jaw muscles, those tighten up in like 11 milliseconds, according to Thomas Hanna in his book, Somatics. And then it just goes down the line here, okay? You're bracing for impact, or now, because this is bereft of blood, and it's supposed to be, because guess what the body's doing? It's shunting it where it needs it. What's this require? This requires, not only blood, it requires oxygen. And so you start breathing faster. And if you're running, you're really breathing, and your legs now are getting all of the blood from that shunting. If the body doesn't need it, the blood moves to where it is used. So heart rate is up, breathing rate is up. Imagine that being chronic. What does that do to your diaphragm? Yeah, it inhibits the ability to breathe deeply. And if I can't breathe deeply, I'm not getting oxygen down into the deep parts of my lungs. I have an incomplete oxygen-carbon exchange. If I have an incomplete oxygen exchange, how do you think that affects cells in my body? Okay. Now, going on further south, all of what's going on here, digestive tract. Okay, your digestive system, this is not rest and digest. This is shut this down. This is not the time for eating. Imagine that chronically. The immune system spikes right away, but because it stays on, it now shuts off. The hormone system, oh, what a mess. Now, what do you think the hormones get involved with? Some of our emotions. We take some of these other neurotransmitters and things like that that are coursing through our body and blood. And when we shut all of that off, that becomes a big issue, a huge issue, because now I have an imbalance that is related to a threat system, which is only if we evolved to not experience that on a chronic basis, but acute. So my immune system, my digestive system. Just if you want to look up some statistics, some interesting stuff to look up is another hormone thing is the insulin glucose relationship. So diabetes, you can look that one up. Another one to look up is heart disease. Another one to look up is irritable bowel syndromes and stomach related things. Reproductive system. Do you think we need that when we're trying to survive? Not quite. The ED, just about every other ad on the internet anymore is about ED and how men can fix that. And I don't know what the equivalent is with women, so maybe somebody can tell me. But it is stress is not going to put you in the mood. All of these things now become chronic. What do you think could possibly happen in those conditions? Just look up the top 10 diseases that kill Americans. I do believe diabetes is one of them. Heart disease is another one of them. I can't even think of the third one is actually, if they included it, would be medical error. But so cancer is a big one. And Robert Sapolsky handles this in great detail in his book, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. States one of them right there. Dr. Sapolsky is a biology and neuro something or other professor at Stanford. He's also his book is a great read because he's not a dry academic. This guy's got a sense of humor and he knows how to communicate well. So here's the physiological side. Here's the neurological side. Getting stuck out of social engagement and rest and digest, that is the state of trauma. That's going to lead to the psychological stuff that we think is where we like to pin. I mean, look at the face again. That is what's going on inside of you 24/7 because you're stuck in this threat state. And when you are stuck there, it then begins to affect our behavior. It begins to affect how our body is working. And that is the state of trauma. We're no longer in a place of equilibrium, what I sometimes call idiodynamicy, just because my numbers might be different than yours. But these two together, that's the state of trauma. Because this is now 24/7. This guy and this being stuck up here in fight, flight, freeze. That is your existence 24/7. And the only place that health and growth occur, according to Stephen Porges, is right down here in social engagement. Now, we can do a lot of things that put on this and plaster this, and we're whitewashed sepulcher. That is not growth and health. Growth and health come from the inside out. And if you're in fight, flight, or freeze, all of that is cut off by default. That's your autonomic nervous system. So trauma is an autonomic state of disequilibrium. Had this been acute, the body still has the autonomic. Anyway, that's for tomorrow. So what we can talk about we can talk about post-traumatic growth, as they like to call it. I don't call it that because, well, I call post-trauma growth. Post meaning yes, after trauma, because the trauma needs to be healed. But anyway, that's for another. I want you to know what trauma is. It's not events. Because if the event was over, so would the trauma be. But because this stays, yeah, the event might be over, but I'm still walking around in this because nobody knows how to care for this, for the most part. There are some of us who do. This is the work that we do. But for the most part, no, that's not happening. And that's how it becomes psychological, because all of that living, if you're living under a threat, and that's why I used this example earlier. If you've ever been stalked on Facebook, or you've got one of those people that just loves to make comments and long comments and so forth and so on, that's what that's like. Now you don't want to post. You could be a man, regardless, and it could happen anywhere in life. But that starts to get you to be off kilter, at the very, very least. And then you're afraid to go out. You're afraid to do this. You're afraid to do that. If you're afraid to do anything because of somebody else's behavior, yeah, that means you're living under the threat response. There you have it. That is as simple as it, and because it's autonomic, that is that is really, really good news, because that is what helps us. Anyway, that's what trauma is. Questions, comments? All right, you can either email me at lecky@raiseyourresilience.com. You can go to the website, check out all the information that's there, and then you can leave comments whatever page you're seeing this on. Oh, this is live, right on. In any event, there you have it. That's as simple as it is. It's not hugely complex. Now, even after 58 years of living with it, well, actually more than that, it's 58 when I started to heal. It's probably another 6-ish, going on 7-ish, before I was symptom free. It's a good feeling. It is a good feeling. There is none of that looking over my shoulder stuff anymore. Don't need it. So anyway, just let me know what your questions are. We'll talk. Bye.